This video will address how to properly inspect and repair the diaphragm assembly inside an automatic control valve. The video is not intended to replace published installation instructions or the experience of a trained product installer. Please refer to the startup instructions for further information and product warnings. Consult local codes before beginning any work. Note: water may drain from the valve during the following procedure. Take proper precautions to protect your space from water damage. A malfunctioning ACV could be due to damage to the diaphragm assembly or debris trapped within the valve body. Removing and inspecting the diaphragm is a simple process and a smart place to start if your valve is malfunctioning. Isolate the ACV by closing the upstream and downstream isolation valves, not shown in this video. To access the diaphragm, you'll need to disconnect the pilot system by unscrewing the necessary hardware. Your pilot system may appear different from the system featured. Be sure to retain any of the removed hardware. To remove the cover, loosen and remove each cover nut. Be sure to retain all nuts and washers. Carefully lift the cover off once all the nuts and washers have been removed. Lift the valve cover straight up to clear the stem before moving the cover away from the valve. Under the cover, you'll observe the cover spring and diaphragm assembly. Remove the spring and carefully lift the diaphragm rubber off of the cover studs. The stem and diaphragm assembly should be inspected and repaired before reinstalling. To disassemble, first loosen and remove the lock nut washer, and nut assembly from the stem. Remove the upper disc assembly. The upper disc features a smooth and a grooved side. During reassembly, the grooved side should contact the diaphragm. Lift the diaphragm off the stem and inspect for damage, embedded debris, or tears. The diaphragm is marked with a colored pattern to identify the diaphragm material. If replacing the diaphragm, and to ensure that the valve continues to operate properly, ensure that the colored pattern matches your replacement part. The final component features a rubber disc, which sits against the seat assembly inside the valve. You'll note an indentation where the disc makes contact with the seat. Remove the disc and inspect for wear and tear. Replace if damaged. The disc can be turned upside down and reinstalled temporarily to keep the valve in service while you obtain a new disc. The assembly features several spacers to help seal gaps in spacing. We recommend reinstalling the same number of spacers that were removed. Lastly, remove and inspect the bottom of the assembly. Inspect the stem for damage as well, and replace if necessary. Take special care to protect these spots on the stem during disassembly and reassembly. Never hold the stem with any device with jaws that could scar the surface. With everything inspected, cleaned, and replaced as necessary, it's time to rebuild the assembly. Slide the disc guide onto the stem, followed by the spacers. Replace the bottom of the disc retainer and rubber disc with the disc facing down. Replace the diaphragm with the pattern side facing down as well. Replace the diaphragm washer, ensuring the grooved side contacts the diaphragm. Finish with the nut assembly, locking washer, and locking nut. Tighten the locking nut in place. Replace the diaphragm assembly inside the valve body, ensuring it's seated properly inside the valve and onto the cover studs. Replace the valve cover, ensuring the connections for the pilot system are properly positioned. Evenly tighten the cover nuts in a crisscross pattern. After tightening all the cover bolts, reconnect the pilot system. Restart the system by opening the upstream valve and allowing the valve to pressurize. Bleed air from the pilot system and cover. Finish by slowly opening the downstream valve. Regular inspection and maintenance of the valve will ensure continued operation of the system. Learn more about ACV at watts.com.